Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out to support the Hamilton Film Festival today at Industry Day. Just wanted to start off with a big round of applause for Nathan Fleet here for putting on such an amazing event. We're here to talk about Canadian distribution and getting your film seen today, and we have an incredible lineup of panelists here that have a very different outlook on distribution and things like that. So I'm gonna dive in here. My name's Christopher Giroux. I'm the president of the Hamilton Film Board, and events like this are so important to do and to be a part of, not just as amazing panelists, but as attendees to get your film out there and to network and get your film seen. So thanks so much for participating. I'm going to start off with Cam Maitland is the film content specialist for the Canadian movie channel's Hollywood Suite. He's a producer, writer, filmmaker, and originally from Edmonton, Alberta. He received a fine art degree in filmmaking from Simon Fraser University, and through his years, his work has developed into digging through Canadian film history projects like the Royal Canadian Movie Podcast and writing and producing originals, documentary program about film history like A Year in Film and Cinema A to Z. His work on top of spotlighting classic films also includes consulting along development and acquisition team on the original films and series on Hollywood Suite. So give it up for Cam. What a response there. Even the microphone is excited you're here. And up next, we've got Chad Archibald, who's a writer, director, producer, and founder of Black Fawn Films and Black Fawn Distribution, who's known for his unique blend of bold storytelling and stylish cinematic vision. Archibald made a lasting impact on the genre world with his breakout film Bite. After ambulances were rushed to its sold-out premiere at the Fantasia International Film Festival, stunned audiences celebrated the film's falling ovation as people were attended to by EMTs for fainting and passing out during the film. The film went on to win film festivals and prestigious audience awards. Archibald's work includes such thrillers as The Heretics, the atmospheric genre-fusing I'll Take Your Dead, have captivated global audiences and secured distribution with partners like HBO, Crave, and Shout Factory. His latest endeavor, the mind-bending feature It Feeds, which stars Ashley Greene from the Twilight Saga and Shawn Ashmore from the X-Men franchise, debuted at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and is being praised for its surreal visuals and terrifying tonally focused direction, and after recently wrapping a successful worldwide theatrical release, the film has secured deals with Hulu, HBO Max, and Crave. Archibald also works in television, writing, and directing for Eli Roth's series The Haunted Museum, which is available on Discovery Plus. And as a producer, Archibald also has produced over 35 feature films, including The Undertone, which was recently acquired by A24 in a high-profile bidding war at Fantasia International Film Festival. Other titles include Shudder's Vicious Fun, Death Valley, as well as The Oak Room, which won Best Canadian Feature at Fantasia in 2001. So give it up for Chad Archibald here. And we've got Louie, who is the co-founder and CEO of FoundTV, a global streaming platform, and has been a part of the executive producing team for features starring Alec Baldwin, Tara Reid, and the late, great Michael Madsen. Producer and entertainment business owner from Canada, known for upcoming horror films of Possession in Lincoln County, Practice House, The Woodman, and The Invited. He has also produced large concerts, music festivals, and spoken on global stages about entertainment entrepreneurship, marketing, and a fun fact, he gave Lady Gaga her very first interview. Give it up for Louie.
I didn't know that.
It's true. I almost said no, because we didn't know who she was. That would have been a weird story. Hold on. That was my better? Worse?
I think the microphones could be haunted. So with Canadian distribution, the market is consistently changing. And I think that most people think distribution comes at the end of making your film, but it's really infused throughout the making of. So I wanted to dive right in, and this question's for all three panelists here. How would you describe the current state of Canadian distribution and the broadcasting landscape, and what excites and concerns you most? We'll start with Chad.
I think right now in Canada, I'll speak to genre films because that's mostly what we work in, but I think it's an exciting time. I think there's so many interesting filmmakers out of Canada doing great projects, and the majority of what we actually release in Canada through Black Fawn Distribution are Canadian films. Some of them are films that we produce in-house through Black Fawn Films, but some of them are also films that we pick up, like The Last Video Store, and movies like A Night's War. There's so much crazy talent in this country, and filmmaking is so accessible that it's really exciting to see just what's coming down the pipe. I watched a movie last night, literally, that I was like, wow, I can't believe this was shot in Kitchener, Ontario, and looks awesome. Then, I mean, I think there's so many partners. And when it comes to streaming and digital platforms, every year is so different. I think it's always evolving. Everyone's always trying to figure it out. I'm curious what you're going to say because, being on that side of it. But it's, I feel like every year our approach is so different. I do think it is accessible. It is about just finding the right people to show your projects to. I know there was a movie called Scared Shitless that I talked to the producers a couple months ago, and they were like, yeah, we didn't know what to do with it, so I looked up this person on LinkedIn who worked at Netflix, and I sent her a screener, and she was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And now it's on Netflix Canada. So I mean, it's so much of it is just about trying to be in the right place at the right time and talk to the right people and get your projects out there.
And Cam?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll represent terrestrial broadcast television, but I would say generally confusing. It's fine if you feel confused. We all are, even on our side. What I tend to say is. Broadcast television in Canada is a lot more robust than you would think. A lot more people still watch it than even we anticipate quite often when the numbers come back to us. I think both the lack of high-speed internet in rural areas, it's a little more than 60%, I think, don't have what would really be counted as high-speed internet, so they stream a little less. They still like cable. They still like satellite. So we have not we're an industry braced for the sunsetting of our existence at some point, but it is coming a lot slower than we anticipated. That said, everyone's diversifying. Canada also was very lucky that our cable systems, our broadcast choices were very quick on integrating with streaming. So pretty much now if you get Rogers, if you get Bell, you get streaming as well. It's kind of all one thing. And most Canadian channels, including ourselves, are available via streaming. So like you can get Hollywood Suite through Prime Video, through River TV if you want to stay Canadian. So I do think that there's still a lot of opportunities in what might seem a little old-fashioned. And I'd say my concern, I think as a broadcaster and as somebody who likes Canadian films, it's always, are people actually watching? Like how do you get somebody to watch it, even if you are putting it out there, even if you're at a film festival, even if you're putting it on our channel, like how is it enough and how can you make sure that people actually watch these films?
And Louie?
Yeah, those are solid points and viewpoints. I think it's very accessible distribution, I would say, because as a streaming platform, although we're new, I came through, being a producer and content developer as well as the music industry. And I think film and TV is starting to echo, or maybe already is echoing a lot of the music industry, where creating content, dollars have come down, so you can create a lot of content that gives a big opportunity, but also floods the market at the same time. Cam, to your point on marketing, as a marketing background as well, that is a huge piece of getting eyeballs to that content. The accessibility is there. A lot of channels, a lot of streamers. YouTube itself is a big market player. I think the concern, or something that we're always trying to figure out since we were, not around and film and TV is financing. So how do we get to the audience enough to go backwards and know that there's financing to make your movie or TV? I think that's always a big piece of what's in my mind, is how do we finance something and make a normal budget that's going to be feasible as a business, and then finding distribution. You'll Chad, like you said, you'll find partners if you can get that content in front of the right people.
I think what's so refreshing about all the answers is that no one said that the sky is falling. No one said
It's always falling,
It's
and
always
it's
falling.
not falling at all.
I think that's so refreshing. I think that we hear a lot in the media about potential U.S. tariffs, and we hear about how the market is consistently changing and evolving, and it is. But everyone seems to be positive with how the industry is consistently evolving.
Yeah, and I mean it's film, so Monday is fantastic, and Wednesday you want to start in a new career, and then Friday it's is it stable enough to last the weekend?
But all three of you kind of touched on the importance of finding your audience and putting together a series of films. Perhaps all three of you guys can touch on, because we've got Chad from Black Fawn Distribution that does theatrical, that does physical media, that does broadcast deals. We've got Cam, who's a broadcaster. We've got Louie, who's created his own streaming service. How do you guys find that audience? How do you guys find that film and say, this film is great for the audience that I've already created? Let's start with Louie.
I think my wire's holding me back here. Yeah, great question. I like what I like to watch too. I think that's kind of why most of us are in this business. We have cool ideas, and we don't always get to create those ideas, but sometimes we can find great films and TV that's out there that fits what we love. So we have passion. It's a long road to develop and shoot and get a film out there. They always say it's a miracle to get a film done, no matter how great or not great it is. And I think that's pretty cool to be able to produce and get a film done. So I like to be involved in projects that kind of resonate with me. But there's an audience for everything. And especially in our FoundTV being a found footage platform, you have all kinds of different quality of found footage films. And sometimes we're surprised on some of the films that come in at literally $2,000, and it's a haunted whatever, and they paid their actors and they directed and edited themselves, and the budget was basically nothing. And it's just a cult fan film. And sometimes it surprises me, and I'm like, that's because there is an audience for everything. And again, as a marketing background as well, you try and figure out who would like this particular film. First of all, does it fit on Found? Yes, great. But then how do I get that in front of the right people? I think because it's noisy out there, you have to be able to identify where those fans are. And you're looking, on Facebook groups, Reddit, you're doing ads on Instagram and TikTok, and you're trying to get it in front of them. And then the quality of the content, the storyline just gravitates itself, and that's where it grows from there. That's in sort of that, in my world anyways.
And Cam?
Yeah, I mean, my thing that I tend to tell Canadian filmmakers especially is that, the old "it's not a sprint, it's a marathon," but also from our point of view, it's an ultra marathon that never ends until you die. Basically, I think that you can find an audience at any time when your film is done. An example I like to bring up is, we had this movie, it was kind of a student film. I believe it's called Welcome to the Parade. It was just a guy in Toronto. He made it as a student in the late 80s. He, had enough money a few years ago and was like, I made a 4K version. And we put it out. And I think just because so much time had passed, regardless of the story or anything like that, it was just this capture of 80s Toronto that looked beautiful. You saw the old subways, everything else. And it got, again, an audience again. And I do think there is always these opportunities, and sometimes the first push can be a little disheartening, especially because you're putting all your weight behind it. But I always think that there's just all these opportunities, and I always tell people, when you sign that first, especially if you're with a broadcaster, 3-year, 5-year, sometimes 10-year deal, immediately kind of think of what happens after those 10 years, because you still have that movie forever, and that movie can continue to find an audience, and audiences evolve. Sometimes the content interest evolves. I just think it's kind of a living thing, and you always have to consider that the audiences are changing, tastes are changing, and you never know.
And Chad?
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, I was in a band and quickly realized, if we don't promote our band show, no one's going to show up except our close friends, and you can't always, you never know. So, I mean, going into film early on, we did a movie in Guelph, and it was the first movie I ever shot in Guelph. It was in 2000, which seems crazy, but it was. But we just started making noise about this project that we were doing. None of us knew how to make a movie. None of us had any friends that ever made a movie. I just read, Filmmaking for Dummies and just went out with some buddies and tried to make it. No one had ever acted in a movie. No one had ever been on set. So we were just figuring it ourselves. And, we just started being like, okay, well, how do we let people know that we're doing this, So we reached out to newspapers and started doing things like that. And like it became a thing where it was like everyone in Guelph knew that we were doing this. And we started putting on shows. So we'd have a bunch of bands come out and we'd premiere like the new trailer for our movie, which, we made one before we even made the movie. We just like went out to a barn and had our buddy in a fur coat swinging a shovel around. It was really bad, but we sold it out. There was like 300 people there and it just kind of started spiraling until eventually we got the movie done. And I think we sold out like 6 screenings at Cineplex in Guelph. I mean, no one else saw it anywhere else other than the Guelph, but that was really like where we were pushing it. And at that point, we ended up going to Toronto. We showed them, met one distribution person, showed them what we had done in Guelph and the noise we had made and whatever, and they ended up taking it and selling it to Lionsgate and Alliance Atlantis. So that was the first thing that we ever did. I was back when Blockbuster was around, so I was in every Blockbuster, and it was just this, huge release of this horrible movie. So, I mean, over the years, we've just really learned that, I'm sure everyone's watched a movie on a platform and been like, how did this get out there? Like, why can't my movie get out? This got out there, really? I mean, we've done that, for years as we were making films in our backyard, and we really just started looking at everyone and saying, like, every time we notice a movie, every time we notice an indie movie, it's like, what did they do to make me notice it? And how can we do what they did? And over the years, we started learning how to do that. I really was a filmmaker and writer-filmmaker. That's still, my primary thing. I started Fawn Distribution with some very talented people. I won't tell you who. But a big part of it was really because it was like making your movie is one thing. It's like you go out, you kill yourself, you make your movie, and then you go out and you get it to a distributor. And often for indie films, a distributor will pick it up, and I love you already. It's all good. And streaming platforms are very different than distributors. And I'm talking more like Blu-rays, things like that back in the day. But it's I say it because if it doesn't have huge stars and it doesn't sell itself, a lot of distributors around the world, they plop it out and they just hope that it's one of those things that magically finds an audience and whatever, and they don't put the time and effort into it because it's not worth their time and effort. And I mean that in like a business sense. Like, it's really hard to sell a movie that's not great, and for us, we always just have that mentality of like, no one's going to love your movie more than you do. So we started going to film festivals, and we started being like, okay, I mean, our movie might not be the best movie at the film festival, but how do we make more noise than everyone else? And we didn't know how to do any of this. We just started going like online, looking up every newspaper in the area, every radio in the area, and just reaching out and being like, hype up our movie and see if anyone will talk to us. And we started organizing press days and things like that for our films. And like suddenly we were going to film festivals and selling out every screening that we were doing and making a lot of noise and building a fan base from there. And for years we've been doing that. And even recently, this is an example, we did a movie called The Undertone that premiered at Fantasia. We finished it about 3 days before the screening, and we just went in there and we were like, how do we, we dropped the trailer a couple days before because that's when it was done, poster, everything. It kind of came out of nowhere, but we just had our whole team, everyone we knew, trying to push that this is happening, this movie screening, and we did our press days and we took our photos and did our socials, and we just pushed really, really hard with this, and premiered at Fantasia, won the Fantasia Award, sold out all of our screenings, and company took notice of all the noise, got a screener of it, and all of a sudden we were talking to Roy Lee and Steve Schneider, who produced every genre film under the sun right now, including like Weapons and Barbarian and everything from Minecraft to whatever. They called us and they were like, this movie's phenomenal. We've heard all about it. You guys have made so much noise. This is really cool. We want to bring it out and help you guys sell it. So we went with them, and it started a bidding war with Neon and A24 and all these people. And for us, we were like, we've never done this before. This is, we dreamed to work with A24. So it was like this week of us being on phone calls and being like, what the hell's happening? And then it sold to A24. So it's, we always look back at that experience and go, wow, like if we never made the noise that we made and we never put the effort into, calling the random people and having every single reviewer that we could, come out and see it, and trying to get every person that would come and do an interview, even if it's for us to take the photos and put it on our socials of the director, and everyone doing interviews. It's like if we didn't do all those things and the stars didn't align, we'd be out selling the movie to who knows, and there's a world where, A24 is going to put it in every theater in North America. But there's a world where we, a different distributor saw it and we gave it to them and they were like, there's no big stars, so we'll just plop it out on a platform and see if anyone notices, and there's definitely a world where that would happen with that same film. So
the amazing thing that I keep hearing from all three of you is that not only does the distributor has to believe in the film, but the filmmaker has to believe in the film and be their own advocate for the project that they're pushing, regardless of the level of the film that they're at. So,
yeah, I think I'd agree with that too, because like as you say, it means a lot. We tend to have a little earmarked for anything premiering, but it means so much to have the filmmaker available to like do press again, to do another push, to kind of meet up with PR people. Yeah, it's like you say, it's just amount of bodies and amount of time to give to something. You're always going to kind of be the face of that, and it just never stops.
And you think of it like a team, I think, is like we never give a movie to a distributor and be like, all right, it's your problem, because it's like you'll never know how it's going to go. But even we were just talking about this earlier, it's like resources are so small everywhere in the film industry right now that it's like if you're putting a movie out with a broadcaster or whoever, it's like, how do you work together? Reach out to them. How can you do videos? How can you, as a director, like, how can you create social media content for them to share? Like, so much of it is just lack of resources,
Yeah, and we never really get sick of the people who like tag themselves in the movie every time it airs. It's like, that's fine. That's easy for us. Also, it's like usually the interesting story of a movie is not something that a distributor can get across as easily, or even just a PR company. Like that usually takes the actual person sitting there. And sometimes it's a star. Like sometimes the person who isn't a known star has that quality and can go on, the radio or whatever and be great. And that means so much as well. It doesn't take necessarily a name. It just takes somebody who cares.
Yeah, I think making the noise is a huge thing to take away. We've done, we noticed that, better stories might die by not having all that noise versus a filmmaker that is doing all those efforts. We even get some that send us little clips so we can make little giffies out of them, and they'll hit 1 million views of usage, and us in this, very relatively small filmmakers that are just caring, like you guys are saying, and they just continue to help promote, give marketing ideas, tag, like all that stuff, like like both of you are saying, and Chad, you just mentioned, like, be part of that team. I don't think there's a world where you should give it to the distributor and then sit back and wait for the check to come in, because you're going to eventually complain that I got screwed by the distributor. Like, I think that you need to be a part of that team. They may have direction. I'm sure companies as big as A24 will say, we know our plan, and this is where you can help. And then there's other, streamers and distributors and broadcasters that really want this, collaboration. But I think it's really important to be a part of that process, not just be like, hey, I'm done. I'll just sit back on, on the beach and wait for the millions. I think that you
be your own advocate. Be your own advocate.
You do, yeah.
And that goes for you too, Louie. I mean, Louie's started this streaming service. I remember us talking about it over a year ago.
Yeah, you guys are like one of the first persons to say, we're going to start a streaming platform.
And it's like, cool. And the amount of people that say it is great. But I mean, it's different saying you want to do something or saying you want to make a movie and going out, doing it, and going down the right paths to promote it in a way that, you make a lot of noise. I see Found stuff everywhere. And I'm always like, man, you make more noise than like a lot of companies that we see. And you've got so much done in a year of existing in such a niche. that I mean, I'm always impressed.
Well, thank you.
I'll even go as far as to say I came in today and I saw that you had all those handbills, and I'm like, God damn it, I should have brought stuff to give out at Hamilton. So I immediately was like, I should have been to the office. You got
Thanks for
me.
having those flyers left over. I think, Chris, maybe you had some. I told Monica, my wife and business partner in Found, like, I got to bring the flyers because maybe they'll want it out there. And of course, I forgot because, you're so busy. But you had it. Thank you for that. See, it's a collab.
See, and being a good person that somebody likes matters.
Thank you.
Chris Giroux knows some marketing stuff too.
Yeah. I think there's something in distribution and filmmaking that we hear, a term that we hear so often, and it's Canadian content. And I think that, a lot of people associate Canadian content with, shows like The Red Green Show and Trailer Park Boys and things that are very Canadiana. But perhaps you three could touch on what kind of Canadian content means to you, because most of the time it's not a movie about playing hockey. It can be a movie that is made by Canadians but is maybe not set in Canada. So what does kind of Canadian content mean to you? We'll start with Chad on this side.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've traveled around the world doing film festivals, and I think it's been really awesome over the years to wave the Canadian flag and Canadian genre films, and I think it's so easy because there are so many awesome Canadian genre filmmakers. And it's funny talking to people in other countries as well that talk about Canadian genre films and saying it's like such a style, and it's like, is it because you guys, survive the winters, or is it, what is it about Canadian films that, give you guys that feeling to it? So, I mean, it's nice to hear that on the global scale, it's like there's an identity there, and that, we've got such a vast country with people in all sorts of climates and geography and looks, to film. So, I mean, I think it's so awesome that it's, there's a staple there. As far as Canadian content goes, I feel like, we're on a different, there's Canadian content, which is, what's going to get financed by government grants. There's Canadian content of what's actually being made in Canada. And I think there's a big scale in between it all.
Yeah, here's where I come back in as the cable broadcaster, and they're like, Canadian content is technically defined as, because, we need those C numbers, baby. Get certified by the CRTC, because that means a lot to us. But, I do think, like you say, especially on a global stage, it's a lot of specificity and, unique point of view. And I do think our diversity is often what people are interested in. We have a lot more platforms for large diaspora voices, or even, just specific cities. Like, we're here in Hamilton, celebrating Hamilton specifically, and a Hamilton film is different from a Toronto film, is different from a Guelph film. And I think sometimes you can't see that as much within Canada, but when you get outside, there's glimmers of that, and I think people really appreciate that specificity. But again, I can't stress enough, you have to be certified by the CRTC.
Yeah, it's
if
so
you want
important
to sell to us.
Yeah, we get film submissions, of course, from around the world and love them all, and in genre films as well. I feel like, Chad, to your point, having, different cultures and climates in different cities obviously gives it a nice style, but I feel like in Canada we also have a different grit, we can get this done with or without the government funding, and we'll find a way, and that sort of comes through. I find that I get surprised on budgets when I'm like, oh man, this looks like $1 million movie, and it was done for so much, and I feel like we've sort of grown into that underdog story, and let's get this done, and we're not going to stop, and it feels like it shows through. I think there's a lot more Canadian content that's amazing that is probably not promoted or the world doesn't know, maybe because, again, we leave marketing to the side because we spend every last dime sometimes on screen, and then it's just that organic noise, but there's a beautiful style out there that I
always say to people who want to work in the Canadian film industry should watch Canadian films, because that is the market that they're actually working in. I think so many people say, I caught Gladiator and it's fantastic, but that's not the arena that most Canadian filmmakers are playing in. And so to really search out that kind of Canadian content, whether it be on TV or supporting Canadian films in cinema and stuff like that.
Yeah, I also think when people are like, oh, do you have any advice for a pitch? I always say, when you're listing actors, list some Canadian actors. Because if you only list American actors, it makes me wonder how realistically you're thinking. You can have both, and you can have an A and a B and what have you. But especially in your supporting roles, it just feels good to read a pitch that has considered existing Canadian talent or somebody I've never heard of, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
And also, just last thing is, as Canadian filmmakers, the benefits that we have for creating Canadian content is amazing. A lot of our broadcasters, they have to hit a certain number of Canadian films that they have on their roster. So I mean, lucky enough for us that that's in place, so that they are always looking for Canadian specific content. And us as Canadian filmmakers, it's amazing to be able to go to broadcasters and say, yes, no, we fit there. And it just makes it so much easier for Canadian filmmakers to sell to a Canadian broadcaster and get their films out there.
And it's not hard to hit. I made it sound scary, but it doesn't have to be somebody chugging maple syrup and all Canadian actors. It's easy to hit. You just have to keep a little money aside, and
Yeah, and some of this conversation, I'm not sure if anybody is questioning why we're mentioning C numbers and Canadian actors, and that's part of the financing question. We kind of said earlier the distribution is out there and things like that, but sometimes financing comes into play, and that really is an important piece of the pie, getting Canadian tax credits, getting Canadian broadcasters that want to promote Canadian content, and also because that falls into their financing plans. So Canadian actors are part of that system, a Canadian director, Canadian writer. So there's a little world out there, probably another panel another day, that's about financing, and how that gets the movie made. Then that couples in with distribution.
And I can say, without revealing all of my sources, there are certain requirements in television channels that are not us, in their advertising, to advertise premieres of Canadian content. So when we get a movie that's new, that is exclusive and a premiere, we actually get the ability to air ads on other channels through cable systems. It's not always guaranteed. It's kind of a handshake deal. But at the moment, when we get a new Canadian certified production that is premiering, it gets to be spread pretty widely across American channels as well.
These are all benefits that a lot of countries don't have, so take advantage.
And I think most people, when they're making their film, and everyone's very focused on, I got to get the camera, I got to make the film. If I just get the film kind of in the can, then distribution and marketing will kind of take care of itself in a sense. But what I'm hearing from all three of you in different ways is that distribution is talked about so early in the process, not necessarily when the film is complete. Sometimes it's in prep, sometimes it's in financing. When do you guys think it's important to at least start thinking about where my film is going to go? And often, as it sounds, it's not when the film is complete and it's in the can. It's before that. So let's start with Cam. What do you think?
Oh, I do think it can be any time. I don't want to worry anybody that if you have a film in the can that you're sitting on, it's okay. Yeah. But I do think that we often surprise people, especially as just speaking from a broadcaster point of view. We can come in on a project extremely early. Broadcasters in Canada have access to the Canadian Media Fund. They will start connected broadcast funding as early as pre-development, which is essentially paying you to write a film. Most broadcasters only have a couple slots available for that, so it's a little tough to get in on. But yeah, you can sign in at any time, and we are often talking to filmmakers before they've filmed. We're not a big part of anyone's budget. We're not financing anyone's movies at my size. Probably CBC and Crave. Maybe get them. If you can get them on the blower, go for it. But yeah, I do think that distribution can, from a TV point of view, come in quite early and be a part of your financing package.
And Louie, what about you?
Yeah, I will play both sides, streaming platform and producer that's developing stuff. Same answer. You're going to hear this all the time. Any time is good. But pitching things, I will tell you, I have created development deals with just an idea and they loved it. And I'm now developing things that are going to be US based because the idea was strong, and I knew where my audience was, all the way to, Chad, I'm sure you'll talk about a film that's completed because you didn't have distribution early on or whatever the case was, and now you're shopping to see where this fits. But I think at least knowing where the audience is, and filmmakers that build themselves as a brand, we're seeing a lot of, Tubi, Netflix, a lot of players are now getting into the creator world, the Mr. Beasts, because they have a brand, and they're like, how can we translate that audience to our broadcast platforms, things like that. And you have to be smart about that content and that audience there. But building yourself as a brand is important, and also knowing what you're making for that audience. So whether you come on board to a broadcaster or streamer early on because we have an audience and this is going to fit our platform and figure out how to make that deal, or at least you really know where that audience is and you're talking to the right people, that's extremely important.
And Chad?
Yeah, I think it's a good benefit, even if you don't have a distributor on board, to even talk to a distributor and see what they look for. I think also look at movies that have stuff done. A big thing that we always do, and at any scale, it doesn't matter how big or small the movie is, gallery photos, like all the things that you would need to deliver to a distributor so that they have assets to make posters, to cut trailers, to do any of that. It's like there's so many films that come to us that are like, we've got a cool movie, we've never taken a photo for it, we got a couple iPhone photo behind the scenes things, and you end up with a poster that's like a bunch of stock images that have nothing to do with the movie. I think we started a distribution company solely because we wanted partially to know where the movie was going to go in the end, and we did it almost as an exercise to go, okay, what do we need as a distributor for films that we've made that we can do earlier on, So even when we're on set now, it's like when we have a cool prop or something that's cool, it's like, we'll be like, okay, we're going to make 150 of these because we're going to sell them with the first 150 Blu-rays, And you start coming up with marketing ideas that are interesting. Like we had a movie years ago called Let Her Out that had a girl in a cast, and she breaks the cast off at one point, and she's got this wound, and she reaches in it and finds this thing. Gross. But it was, so we got a bunch of these arms cast, like these like fake prosthetic arms, and we put casts on them, and we painted on it, "Break Me Open." And we sent it to a bunch of reviewers, high-profile reviewers that we could find, and we literally mailed it to their house. So they got this box, they open it up, and there's this arm with this cast on it that says, "Break Me Open." Then they go, and by now they're filming it on their phone going, what the hell is this? They break it open, and there's a wound. And it's like they unstitch the wound, and they reach inside, and they pull out a USB key, and they pop on a USB key, and it's a video of us saying, hey, we want you to check out the trailer for our movie, blah, blah, blah. Here's a screener, whatever. And, now they've got... they've gone through this experience. It's really cool. Every one of the reviewers posted these videos on their social media being like, what the hell is this movie? Here's my experience doing it, And still to this day, it's like, they repost that 5 years ago on this day, is this, this video, whatever. So, it's like trying to come up with interesting ideas like that, because even though, like, and I don't know if we're going to touch on social media, not to go too far, but like, you can post as much as you want on your social media that has 1,000 followers, but it's like, it's about finding the people that your audience is following and getting them to post stuff. It's like, I can post someone on my social media every single day of shooting, every single day of, releasing the film, doing whatever, but it's like the only people who are going to see that are the, 2,000 people that follow you or whatever. And they're going to see it every single day over and over and over again, and they're tired of it and whatever. It's like what you want is the people who have 1 million followers to be posting about it, because that's 1 million new people that don't know about your movie. And if you can just keep hitting these people, these influencers and stuff, and so much of it is free. Like I realized this like recently, we did a movie called It Feeds, and I was just like, who are all these people posting? And I started following like horror reviewers and horror influencers and stuff, and it's like their whole thing is like just posting about movies. And I just started like messaging them on Instagram being like, hey, I got a movie, you want to check out the trailer? All of a sudden, like all these trailer review things are coming out, and they're like, they've got 250,000 followers, and all of a sudden it's like, there's 8,000 likes on it, and 8,000 new people have engaged with our movie now. and we just keep doing that over and over again. And it's all free. I've never paid for anyone to ever post anything on social media for us. But like, if you go look up our films, it's like there's hundreds of these people posting about our movies. And I would say 85 of them I reached out to personally.
And with social media and trying to get your film seen, I think there's lots of filmmakers here in the audience. What kind of tips or trends can you guys share about, getting your film seen, whether it's social media, reaching out to influencers? Back in the day, it was handing out flyers, band flyers, posting them around town. But as the market continues to change, what are great ways that the filmmakers in the audience can kind of take away to kind of, get eyeballs on their film or get bums in seats,
Yeah, I mean, Chad really gave some super huge gold nuggets there on.
Jump that question a little.
You can drop the mic now. That's it. Influencers and creators of all sizes are super helpful. They need content continuously for their fan base, right? So they want access to screeners, the trailer, the filmmaker, like as a filmmaker or filmmaker writer, giving them a little interview or things like that. They want to be able to get access to these things so their fan base grows. So being a part of the community, I think, is really big. So for us in horror, and in found footage especially, there's big Reddits and Facebook groups, and a lot of the filmmakers that are successful are there as fans. And they interact, and they are always around, so the fans know them. They're their own mini influencer, but it's a lot easier for them to reach out in DM and talk to influencers, whether it's a YouTube channel, big TikTok, or Instagram Reels channel where they're doing mini clips and interviews. Just reach out to them saying, love watching what you do, big fan of the movies you promote. I have a film that fits, would love to offer you a screener or a trailer, and happy to do an interview if that's something you want to put in your little clips, and just give them some fuel. And some influencers that are larger get bombarded constantly. Some of them do charge, right? But the ones that do charge, we found the same thing, will do things for the content as well. Although they want it to be a business as well, they do realize they're growing. But, being a part of the community, I think, is a big piece of their openness, and then just reaching out and trying to connect with them. Everybody in the film industry, as you will learn and probably already have learned, it's a small world, so people like to help each other as best as everyone can.
And just a quick point on that too. As a distributor, often a lot of these people charge because they know you have money. If you reach out as a filmmaker, they'll often just do it to support.
Yeah, totally. I would also say this is, again, where we benefit being in Canada, that a lot of, like, TikTok, for instance, doesn't monetize in Canada, so a lot of those people are a little more willing to have a little back and forth, or like you say, they're looking for things to promote. I think, to speak briefly, like just outside of the horror thing, finding a community like that is also very useful. I know we had a TV show, Pollock Ladies, where we really focused on the Sikh community, and yeah, just like influencers there. If you can kind of, you kind of start building. I also think it's a great opportunity. We found great opportunities in just having an influencer involved in a cast at all. They don't barely need to be in this thing, but if they have a couple scenes and they're willing to be a part of the promotional effort, it makes a huge difference. It raises profile a lot, and I think both of you guys are also very, like what you discussed with the arm thing. I know I've seen some found stuff. You all see marketing in that sense as a creative opportunity. Like coming up with a fun idea. I think that means a lot, and that actually gets influencers interested in you. When you see a thing like that, suddenly they want to be a part of it because they know that you are a little social media minded and you know how to make kind of something happen and be fun. And it can sometimes feel, dipping your toe in can feel a little odd, but once you're in it, it's kind of just a natural part of marketing, and it can be pretty fun. And be in the style of the film. I don't think it ever detracts from the final product. It's just a fun way to kind of get the promo out there.
Yeah, we have found on top of working with other influencers, again, being your own influencer, AMAs, like Ask Me Anythings, are really good, especially when you find communities where you would, reach out to a Reddit group or Facebook group that's huge, hundreds of thousands or more sometimes, and say, I'm a filmmaker, new film's coming out, very happy to do an AMA from this hour to this hour, and they, very often groups are also influencers that you can tap into. And then they'd say, great, on Saturday at noon till 4, filmmaker is going to talk about their film and what they've done previously, and ask them anything in that thread, and you just sit there and have fun answering those questions. And you're building yourself as a brand, an influencer, but also utilizing groups as influencers as well, not just a TikTok influencer promoting you. So there's a couple different ways.
I think also trying to find like angles is big. Like, why is your film different than everything else? Like, it's funny because like that's why people get stars. My film's different because it's got this person in it, and everyone loves that person, and that's the angle, and that's all you need. That's why distributors love stars. But when you don't have stars, you got to try to figure out why your movie's different. Really think about, what it is. And sometimes it's like nobody even realizes it until you say something, and you're like, oh yeah, that is true. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. And then all of a sudden you start telling people, it's like, this is why my movie's different. This is the angle that makes it different, and it gives them a reason to be like, oh, cool, this movie's different. I can talk about this. It gives me something to talk about and not just this is another movie,
Yeah, I think with that as well, like never discount, I think when we're working with influencers, never discount that they can just be naturally good word of mouth. Like when you're talking about just sending them your movie, like a lot of the reasons people are a horror influencer is they love horror movies and want to watch horror movies, and everyone has different tastes. And sometimes you can just hit somebody with the right movie, and they'll talk about it multiple times. And then they're on the radio sometime and they bring it up or something else. And I know, I will say, I was on a jury at Fantasia and I saw The Undertone and I told people to go to it. I liked it.
Thanks,
so
man.
all it takes is, sometimes just getting a movie in front of somebody who talks to somebody. And influencers can be like that too. I think, again, that's especially in Canada. A lot of them are truly just passionate about what they're passionate about because they kind of have to do it for the love of the game half the time. So just try to get them a movie, and sometimes you'll just get word of mouth that easily.
Here's a secret insider thing. Sometimes as a streamer, we are very aware of what the influencers or regular fans are posting, what they saw, and it may not be a new movie, and we will go test that movie and put it as part of our featured slider, and we see the views go up. So when you continue to make noise, we are very much paying attention to that, and I know a lot of the other majors do as well, and they will test. You'll notice, how's that movie now showing on the Tubi slider of what to watch, or Paramount's or Found's, and we are paying attention because there's different layers of marketing and wants from a streamer to broadcaster, distributor to filmmaker. We want audience to come to the streamer, so we'll pick films and we'll promote films and filmmakers for the audience to come in. Second layer is we want to promote the films that come through, but now it's also collabing with distribution and filmmakers. That's also their job to get the eyeballs to our platform as well. So there's a lot of layers that go into that, and in that upper layer there, we're very much paying attention to influencers or filmmakers that are creating buzz, even if the film is not new. We've just recently tested it again, and it definitely brings the viewership back up because we see the buzz, and then we feature it. And again, it helps bring views, and then from there you get you would also like, and it just is a nice snowball. So those are things that we're definitely always keeping an eye on.
What I think has been great that has been touched on by all three of you is no one said go hire a PR company. No one said,
nobody can afford that.
No one can afford it, But I think what the three of you have expressed is that the fate is in the filmmaker's hands. If you want to make noise and you want to get bums and seats and eyeballs on your film, then you can make that noise. Whether it's sliding into someone's DMs to get a review, or reaching out to social media, or sending someone an arm in the mail. I think there's lots of different ways to get attention. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I don't have millions of dollars. I can't hire a big PR firm to really step up themselves and find a path for their own film, And I think that a word that keeps getting brought up is community, And whether it's the Hamilton Film Festival community, or the horror community, or all these kind of the found footage community, how important is it to, as a filmmaker, to find your community and feed into that community, participate into that community? Chad?
I mean, it's easy for us because it's horror, and the horror community is insane. Like, and I don't mean that like they're crazy
They're
because
crazy.
they watch
Crazy
horror
people.
movies. I mean, like there's so many horror conventions, there's so many horror influencers, there's so many, it's so funny because it's like every so often I bring like someone who's not in the horror world to a horror convention, and they're just like, "What the hell?" It's like Halloween. It's amazing, and it's in May. It's a great place to be, and it's also, I find in the horror community is some of the nicest people I've ever met, some of the most caring people, thoughtful, passionate people I've ever met. And I am so proud to be part of that community, and I think, that's so much of what being part of a community is like finding the place where you land and, working and sharing with people who are like-minded and growing from there. But also, like any community, it's like you gotta give into it if you want support. It's hard to just go out to a ton of people and be like, this is a community that's going to watch this movie. You guys all go help promote this movie. It's like, but if by embedding yourself and getting to know people, it's like you build support and it's a feel-good story often. When we see other filmmakers that we know from the horror community that are going out to conventions and doing things, it's like it's so exciting for us to see their movies do well. And when we pick them up, we're so pumped and we work extra hard just to, support them as well, like they've supported us.
Yeah, and I do think, again, with the Canadian industry, I think everybody wants everybody to succeed. There's a little less rivalry than you might think. Because it's impossible for anyone to succeed. I don't know. Because it's hard. But I think that a lot of the community finding also just, it builds, and it's, suddenly you kind of know somebody, but you trust their taste, and then the next thing, and you start to see these links of where, for instance, I would say that there's people who are influencers but who aren't influencers, if that makes sense. There are people who are just around, they're connectors, they're kind, they're cool, everybody likes them, and that, being involved with them is very meaningful. When it comes to just connecting directly with community for your movie, I think it's that classic word of mouth thing, and it's that classic thing of that specific community will be passionate about your film and will remember your film more than just a random viewer. And I do think, again, because we're smaller, we're kind of pushing, people see most movies coming out of Canada as kind of an underdog story and kind of a thing that they should be promoting and telling their friends about. It's not quite as hard to ask for that. But also it's always worth asking for that when you do reach the community, when you are like, hey, can you, don't forget to vote for whatever, or things like that. I do think if you connect with people at that level, they're going to care more about your movie.
Yeah, it's hard to add much more than those 2 points from both of you guys. It's really just like you said, there's a community for everything, an audience for everything, and I think being a part of it and being authentic is going to show. You never want to jump into, we do horror, but I want to create something completely different, and that's okay to do. But I would never jump into that group and be like, by the way, my movie's now out on Amazon, so everyone go watch it. I think that's it's obviously, it sounds spammy, it's not authentic. You'd want to be a part of that community. There's a reason why you're making that film, even if it's not the norm that you normally do, which is okay. But you want to learn about that community, be a part of it, and again, there should be a reason why you want to create something in that. So, but being authentic, I think, is probably one big thing I can add to that.
Yeah, and like Hamilton, same thing. It's like these are all communities, whether it's Hamilton or genre film or Canadian. It's like the best way to get a community to support you is to be a good community member.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like, it also can't be a one-way street. I think people start to see through that right quick. So yeah, find as many ways as you can give back, and that includes watching other people's screeners, promoting other people's movies. When you do like something, giving it a shout out, like that. People remember that, and that is also very meaningful.
Coming to the Hamilton Film Festival.
Yeah, absolutely. I think feeding into the community is so important. And Cam, we know you're from Toronto, but we love you anyways.
Yeah.
But Louie and Chad are Hamilton
Edmonton.
filmmakers, and so it's great to have Hamilton filmmakers and Hamilton distributors on this panel. And last question before we throw to the audience. there's so many different ways to watch movies nowadays. We've got streamers, we've got broadcasters, we've got online. You can watch a movie on your phone. The theatrical experience is still alive. How important is it to not just focus on one thing, about exploring different platforms and exploring different ways to show your movie? Chad?
Yeah, I mean, we started a distribution company and we put out a DVD. That was like all we knew how to do. One of the people that we that partnered in when we started distribution was Chris Ben, who owned a record company. So we knew that he would be able to get DVDs into HFB at the time. So all we did is put out a DVD. And then over the years, we started going, well, how do people get it on a streaming service? How do people get it on an airplane? How do people get it on a broadcaster? And I swear, no one ever told us how. We literally just sat online and figured it out. And it's so much easier than you think it is. We just started a world sales company. So we're now at the point where Undertone was one of the first films that we went out and we're like, nobody's going to sell this movie to the world. We're going to sell it. Obviously, we've sold a lot of films to the world through sales agents. But really, a lot of it started with, I just sat down and went, okay, in Germany, this company released our movie. I've never talked to them. I don't know. I have no contact there. But I reached out to them on Instagram and said, hey, I'm the director of this movie that you guys released. We've got another movie that we're trying to sell. And they responded right away or sent a thing. And we literally built a world sales company just from doing that. It's like everything that we've learned in distribution, I would say no one told us any of it. So much of it is us just going, well, how does everyone else do it? I don't know. Look online. You can find anything online. You can find any contact. Now, especially easier. I wish we had tools that we had now, even the AI crap. It's you can really do anything that you want in this world. It's just a matter of how much time you're willing to commit to it, because it's endless. And that's part of the sickness of being a filmmaker and distributor, is that you're never done. There's always a million things you can do to help make your movie, promote your movie, get your movie out there, get it on more screens, get it on more eyes. It is endless. Daunting.
And Cam?
Yeah, I mean, the same. Endless dauntingness. No, but I do think that just see everything as an opportunity. And part of the dauntingness is also that it can be pretty heartbreaking if you don't get great theatrical, or you don't get this, or you don't get that. But there are always different pluses. So, one I know I can always say is I think sometimes people are a little sad when their kind of world premiere is not theatrical. It's on our TV channel, but I can say that if you do premiere on a TV channel, it opens you up to different awards. It makes you technically a TV movie. And man, oh man, that TV movie category at the Canadian Screen Awards, you can win that real easy, folks. It is not stacked. I believe one of those Amityville movies won one year. So no offense if anyone was involved.
Duly noted.
Yes.
First found footage.
Truly,
First
dude.
found footage.
That quality, that one specifically, and I think streaming might count too. But yeah, I do think there's so many opportunities. I also, you mentioning airplanes, that's a nice little paycheck you get if you're on an airplane. Let me tell you, and people watch it more. Suddenly, people are like,
they can't go anywhere. They got to watch your movie because they're stuck on an airplane.
I have a ton of shows that are on TV all the time, and then suddenly I got all these photos of people on airplanes. I'm like, yeah, these shows have always been around. But I do think, there's just always opportunities. And I'm also, part of my job, we mostly show retro movies. So I'm constantly meeting filmmakers. I was at Fantasia, and I was saying to people, do you have old movies? Is there any movie that you think is kind of cool that is HD that, you want us to look at? So, yeah, there's always opportunities. And I do think that you just kind of have to keep at it. Yeah, I don't know that you're ever going to live off these residuals, but at least you love your movie and you want people to see it, and there's always opportunities to see it.
Yeah, so true. Thinking about the different ways to watch the content, Chris, like you were saying, we also like to look at different ways to tell that story or get people to sort of fall in love with the story, so they go watch the film, and then whether that film is in theaters, on streamers, TV, or on their phone, sometimes it's just a different way to tell a story in a social media post, right? Or a different angle. Sometimes it's BTS stuff. But I think like thinking about that in the big picture adds back to the noise factor and how to use that for noise in marketing. But, you know, it's the transmedia, it's called, right? Like, how do we tell different stories? We've had some filmmakers make comic books, and they were good at illustrating, and they told a different angle in a comic book, a downloadable, that told a backstory, you know, and that backstory, you know, gave a little bit of different context to your film or made you aware of the film, and you're like, oh, that's a cool story, so I'll go watch the film. So there's all kinds of different things you can play with and be creative.
Yeah, and I forgot my other good troll answer for you. One of the first people to stream shows on Twitch was Steve Smith of Red Green. He was like obsessed with Twitch really early on. He had a very big Twitch channel, and it was just episodes of Red Green back to back.
It's epic. I'm a massive Red Green fan, so it's fantastic. And to Cam's point, before we grab some questions from the audience, TV movies. Our next panel at 3:30 is about TV movies, and specifically TV movies that shoot here in Hamilton. So stick around for that. So let's grab some audience questions. We have a microphone being passed around. Got our first question right here with the gentleman with the red hat there.
Hello. Question is about...
Just don't think your mic is on.
Hello?
Yeah, check if it's got a little...
Hello? Better?
Good.
So the question is about the sales. You know, I know that if you want to sell it, they get about like between 20 or 25% of the sales revenue. Is this apply in the sales? And if I go straight to the distribution, what is the budget that a distributor gonna charge, and what's a normal back end that they going to ask?
I think your mic is cutting in and out there, but I think your question's about back end and sales and percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to take that fun question
Your
first?
distribution
Chad.
sales, bro.
I mean, over the years, we've had a lot of sales agents that we've worked with, and us being a sales agent now as well. It's always tricky. You know, I think overwhelmingly, I know it's obvious, but gotta say it. Best thing you can do is make a good movie. You make a good movie, and it will attract people, and it will have opportunities that a movie that's not as good won't have. So I mean, it's tricky because, you know, even with sales agents, I find it's hard because they don't know your movie as well as you. You really have to give them everything that you can for them to go out and sell it. You know, they want to make sales, but often as an indie film, it's like they go out and they make sales to the films that sell themselves, the films that have big stars and cast and stuff. So over the years, you know, we've had a lot of indie films with no stars that are like, you know, they don't get the opportunities, and you're always calling the sales agent being like, anything new? Anything new? And it's hard to make a movie and love it so much and then give it to generally a stranger and just hope that they're going to, you know, go out there and sell it the way that you hoped. But obviously you make a great film and those sales come easier. As far as percentage and stuff like that goes, I know it's a wide range across the board. I know, you know, you go to a big agency and it could be 10%. You go to some sales agents, it could be 25%. Percentages are really tricky. You know, I think there's also a lot of costs that are involved with a lot of sales agents. You know, they have big booths at all the markets and things like that, which help, you know, awareness, but it also, you know, racks up the costs on your film. I mean, really it's tricky, and it is about finding the people that you think will do good. It's never an answer, and that's why a lot of sales agents, when you talk to people, it's like, even when we were starting, it's like I talked to so many filmmakers about sales agents, and it feels like nobody goes back to the same sales agents because everyone feels like their movie should be seen by more people. And that's part of why we started doing it ourselves, is like, you know what, if someone's going to fail me, I'd rather it be me, because at least I know that I tried, and that's where it is. So, but yeah, I mean, sales agents are a tricky I got a weird position in my head for that, so I don't know if I'm even the best person to talk to.
Make a great poster. We're in a thumbnail world. We've been in a thumbnail world for a long time. So to the earlier point of having that content, good photography, so you can create a good poster or work with the distribution to make a good poster. This is not to the percentage question, but if you ever had a chance to go to AFM or Berlin, well, I guess it would be EFM, their film markets, and you walk around. And Chad, last year we're at AFM, and it's coming up again in November, and you'll quickly realize how some things get sold or not by just walking around the overwhelming rooms of just posters, right? And I, as a buyer pass, get inundated with emails full of, this is our lineup coming up, let's meet at AFM. And it's just synopsis and posters. And then from there, trailers. And then from there, watch the movie, right? So you have to cut through all of that noise. And so a sales agent and a distributor has a lot of work to do to get their films and their roster in front of broadcasters and streamers and everybody. So you, again, give them as much support as possible. So you're less worried, let's say, about the percentage and more about do they have enough firepower so they can do their jobs. We've had deals with other distributors where we sold some of our other films before Found, and it was like X amount of percentage, and we were like, oh, should we maybe it should be 25 instead? And it was like, no, that's what you guys want. Just go. Here's the stuff. Go do your thing. That's the percentage you guys want. That's great. I know you have expenses, and we'll negotiate that before the percentages get cut. But I need you to be in love with the film and know you're making enough money. I think I would probably be worried if somebody says, I'll do the sales for 2%. You're like, I got a great deal. You're going to probably complain on Facebook how maybe you didn't get, enough push, right? So that's the
they're going to sell their movie that they get 25% of instead of the one that they get 2% of,
And I think something that got brought up on the writing panel earlier and community that we talked about here is that, filmmakers are in a global community. We're all filmmakers worldwide. And if you're thinking about going with distribution for a company, reach out to another filmmaker who's had a movie distributed through them. Chat about their experiences. If they're being vague, maybe read between the lines. You know what I mean? And I always look for repeat business. If you've been with that company and you've done multiple films, you keep coming back to that distribution company, it means they're probably good people.
And it also usually matters if that person recommend, for them
did you
to
have
come
a good
to you.
experience?
Yeah.
Did you have a good experience with that distribution company, or did you see back end? Did you how candid can you get? I think it's important to reach out. I think that so many people think that they're in a bubble making a movie and it's just me against the world, but everybody had been in the same shoes as everybody else at one point, and often that a filmmaker has, we'll say at least once has maybe been burned, through distribution. We'll just say one time, everybody has one time, has been burnt through distribution company. And so it's important to be honest and to pay it forward as well when you get asked that question later on.
And same with sales agents, talk to people who of other films that they've sold, and also make sure that they sell the kind of movies that you make. If you go to someone who's just selling Christmas movies and they take on your horror movie, they don't have the same contacts. So,
next question, over here, yeah.
How's it going? Thank you so much. Great panel. Always good info. So I have a question about multi-ethnicity movies. If it's mixed language movies, what's the demand? What's the interest on that when it comes to distribution and sales, especially on the TV broadcast side as well? I'd love to hear both from the distribution, theater, and sales, and then TV, please. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, on our side, I think there is interest. It's done well for us. There is also currently financial incentives for, languages outside of Canadian official languages. So we can sign on to projects. There's specific parts of CMF, specific parts of telefilm, things like that. And I often think, like we say, connecting with a community specifically has worked fairly well for us. So I think, just to speak from our point of view, it's pretty positive at the moment. I don't know. It's always still got to be a good idea and a good project, but yeah, I think it's mostly a positive at the moment. Certain distributors prefer to not have subtitled stuff. I know that, but it works fine for us.
Yeah, in the horror world, I think for us anyways, it's less of a concern about other languages. I think a lot of fans love watching other cultures, horror ideas and different languages doesn't bother them. You know, the subtitling is no problem at all. Maybe because it's more about the scares and the feeling, less about like the intense dialogue all the time. Not a problem at all for us. We're a global platform, so not that we would take only Spanish language just for the Spanish market, because we have, you know, fans everywhere that love Japanese horror and Spanish and, you know, all kinds of different cultures and languages. So I think having that community and audience that you know, you're going to create a film or work on a project that has this built-in audience, and then finding out who can also connect to that audience. So which broadcaster or streamer also connects with them. Again, you're not going to create a horror film and then try and go to Hallmark, right? No matter the language, like you know your path, and that's the earlier question of do you work with distributors and broadcasters early on in the project? But I had mentioned at least you know the audience and what your path is, so that you have a strategy there.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add that, like, I think also, like, if you're doing a film in a certain language, reach out to people who've released films in that language as well that are similar genres, and see what their path forward has been and their success levels have been. It's I always say is like one of the most amazing things that you can do as an indie filmmaker is just poke people and ask if they'll jump on a Zoom call and talk to you. It's amazing how many people will and give advice and give thoughts. Like, as I mentioned, the sales agency thing is like, I reached out to so many filmmakers and so many sales agents and just said, can we jump on a Zoom? I got a bunch of random questions, and it's crazy how open people are to share their info.
When I went to film school at Sheridan College, one of the assignments was interview a filmmaker, and I did the assignment 12 times. I only had to hand it in once, but it really helped because most filmmakers love to talk about their films and talk about things that they've done, and I encourage anyone who's on the path to make a movie is to steal that assignment and reach out and just say, hey, I've got a couple questions. You'd be surprised how easy it is to access a lot of filmmakers, broadcasters, sales agents, distribution companies, and say, hey, can I buy you a coffee? Do you have a 30-minute Zoom? And you'd be surprised how fast you can get a meeting. We'll take time for one more question, and then we've got some networking. These gentlemen will be around in the lobby in case your question wasn't asked, and we're going to grab a photo in front of the media wall as well. But last question, this gentleman up front.
Yeah, we probably can both talk to that. Absolutely a chain of title, which is copyright. So the writer has signed that the copyright moves to the producers, and then the producers can get it to distribution and then to streaming or broadcast. That's very important. Logos and stuff like that could be an errors and omissions insurance problem. Music. I mean, there's always these, facts that go around that are not facts that say if you only use a certain amount of seconds in the song, it's fine. Not true. Or we're not going to monetize it. We're going to lose money. Not true. All those things.
Just for film festivals. Not true.
It's just for film festivals. Yeah. All those things have to be in line. If it's going to go up on YouTube, it could still have a takedown. But if you're going to get to distributors and broadcast and streamers, those things do absolutely have to be in line, because we have our own insurances that we absolutely would never ever want to get, not just a takedown notice, but then a legal claim against that, right? So even a student film that still looks great and it fits and it's a great story, that paperwork has to be in line if you're going to do something with it. Yeah. So the chain of title. So, and again, this is all on YouTube. Yeah. You can definitely YouTube all of this stuff. Like, what do I need legally for my film to be sold? So there's a chain of title, which is all the contracts and paperwork. And it could be even the makeup person. Makeup person has to have a contract that says, I did makeup on your film, but my work is yours. It could be the audio guy. The audio person is creating a product, basically, and that has to be that copyright has to be handed over to the producer, right? So all of those, there's probably a laundry list, Chad, of what you need to get people to sign off on, and from there, again, make sure your music has a cue sheet, and also all the music is licensed, even if it's for $1, but they have properly licensed for broadcast. I've had people say, I have the license from a website, and it was $50, but it's only for digital, for YouTube. and then you try and sell it to a broadcaster or theatrically, and that license doesn't cover that. So those are that checklist of legal implications and paperwork that have to be taken care of if you want to do something with that film. Absolutely. And there's tons on YouTube. You can give yourself an entire multiple degrees on everything to do with entertainment just by having fun, staying up late like I've done over the years. How to start a streaming platform. This is not my 4th streaming platform. It's my 1st. And, but you learn, right? You learn from years of business and marketing and YouTubing and asking questions on Zoom to other people that have done it. And you just sort of go and fail and continue. And yeah.
Yeah,
Anything
it's not
else?
much different for TV. I would say that music and errors and omissions tends to be those
And
two.
errors and omissions is also known as E&O insurance as
Yeah.
well.
So getting that, for the most part, it hasn't been gotten. And E&O, sometimes if it's not handled well when you're making the movie, you kind of get stuck in a position where you just can't do it. Like, there's just too much stuff to license where it would actually cost you so much money. But that is if you're using a U2 song and somebody's wearing a logo on their shirt the whole time, an expert will usually give you a pass by. The only other difference I would say for television usually is a certain standard of sound mix. Visually, it can kind of go back and forth, and sometimes we even show standard definition. I'd say generally we like to have, HD, pretty high, nice looking stuff. But if it's Canadian, I think we make an exception. But yeah, it's usually like a certain level of sound mix. So it can be a sticking point. But also, if the movie's great, sometimes
Can be fixed.
people
maybe.
like us.
Blair Witch, they spent a lot.
Yeah.
I know it was $40,000 to make, but they spent
Yeah,
a lot
a lot.
to fix the film because
Yes.
they went theatrical. Good
And-
point on different cameras. If you're going to Netflix, they have a list of cameras you have to use. We just ran into this. I had a distributor call yesterday, and there's a great found footage film. I was like, yeah, what's up with that film? It's been on the festivals, and they wanted to do rentals first, and the sound didn't pass QC on Amazon and iTunes. So they're kind of stuck, but would you take it? And at Found, we kind of have a little bit lower bar because, Apple and Amazon will just do a clear high and, you have to pass QC or not, or it would cost more money to fix that sound than the budget of the movie. But for us at Found, we have a different level of needs and maybe not as strict. So I was like, absolutely, pass it my way. Let me screen it, and maybe we can help support that. So taking a look at where you want it to be, and, again, things can be fixed, but that costs.
And I think that also probably meant that you liked that movie and it was good.
Yes.
And I think that happens with us too. Is like if it's a great movie and it's going to cost $10,000 for a mix, but maybe we add that to the license fee and it all sorts of works itself out.
Yeah, you can figure it out.
So it's always worth a shot.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be a filmmaker and you're going to produce a film, you have to do your deliverables. You have to do your paperwork. There's just no ifs and ands about it. It's we would never release a film that didn't have its paperwork in place. I think if it's something that you want to do as a career, as a producer, you got to figure it out. And if you don't have a producer that'll figure it out, you got to figure it out yourself. And all the basics, making sure that everyone who's on set has paperwork, all that stuff. Aside from that, if you have a lot of it in order, like we've had films come to us that don't have E&O, they don't know what it is, but they've got all their other stuff. It's like we'll come in as a distributor. We'll even help pay for it sometimes or front the money for it, and help people, through their way. But there's a lot of distributors that it's like they'll look at 2 films, they'll look at the deliverables and be like, I'm taking the one that has their deliverables all organized and in order over the other one that might even be a better film. It's a boring part of filmmaking, but it's part of it,
Yeah, it's like not impossible to do after the fact to get that stuff in order, but it can sometimes be a pain, and it can sometimes be a thing where you invest a lot of time and money into it only to find you can't kind of tie off the knot in the end, and that can be pretty frustrating from a distribution side and tough to invest time and money into.
Awesome. Well,
Good question.
Thank you everybody for attending, and thank you to Louie, Cam, and Chad. Let's give them all a round of applause here. Thank you so much.
And thanks, Chris Giroux.
Oh, well, thank you. And a couple housekeeping points. There's going to be some networking in the lobby, courteous of the Hamilton Film Festival. So please stick around, meet the people who are in the room, meet the people who are on the panel. At 3:30, we've got a TV Christmas movie panel, amazing lineup hosted by Ann Purvu with Kat Burrell from Winona Earp and Corey Lee, and so many Canadian legends, Romaine. And so it's a great lineup, so stick around because a lot of TV movies are shot here in Hamilton. They employ a lot of people, and they're a great way to get your start and to get on set. Hamilton had almost 60 TV movies shot here just last year. So really, we are consistently fighting Ottawa for the top spot of most TV movies filmed. So stick around and check that panel out as well. Also, November 9th, the Hamilton Film Board is hosting a networking event at Sean and Ed's Brewery. Between 7 and 10, we're going to have industry leaders and all levels of different filmmakers out. As I mentioned, I'm Christopher Giroux, the president of the Hamilton Film Board, and if you're a filmmaker, on our website we have a registry. We're trying to connect with as many filmmakers as possible who live and work here in the city and create new opportunities for filmmakers in the city. So please check out our website and sign up if you're a filmmaker. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.